let's talk about feminist movies. First of all, what makes a movie feminist, or anti-feminist for that matter? There are so many different scales you can use. Is a movie feminist if it has representation of strong, well-developed female characters that don't play into sexist stereotypes? Or does the plot have to convey a feminist message for the audience to take away? Is it possible for a movie to be feminist if it portrays sexist attitudes or behaviors? These are all things I've been thinking about. First, let's look at the Bechdel test. A lot of people misunderstand the purpose of this thought experiment created by cartoonist Alison Bechdel. The test is used to inspect if any particular movie has A, at least two named female characters, B, that talk to each other, C, about anything besides a man. The concept as a measure of feminism in general has been blown out of proportion in my opinion. What it does do is measure female representation in media, exposing the real scarcity of dimension given to women characters in pop culture. Movies that don't pass, The Avengers, the Lord of the Rings trilogy, Avatar, to name a few examples. Does this mean that the movies that fail are inherently sexist or anti-feminist? No, not necessarily. It definitely doesn't mean that movies that pass are inherently feminist, but the ones that fail lack a seemingly bare minimum representation of women, which I think is a criticism that shouldn't be swept under the rug. It's notable that similar tests have been developed to analyze the representation of people of color, like the Duvernay test, or queerness, like the Vito Russo test, in media. While women's representation in movies and other media is an issue, it's no more important than representation of all kinds. In my opinion, I think that a lot of movies can have certain feminist aspects, like some of the things I was talking about before, but it takes a little more to be, as a whole, a feminist movie. What I would say is that it has to add some kind of new, original insight or commentary into the conversation of feminism that other forms of communication can't do or haven't done. But now, what does this look like? I don't know. We'll come back to this. For now, let's look at the genre of horror. For decades and decades, horror movies have been commented on for their portrayal of women. Slasher movies, since the beginning, have depicted women as the prime victims of serial killers, arguably sexualizing their death scenes. The final girl trope is a necessary point in the conversation of feminist horror analysis. It began with the 1978 movie Halloween and categorizes when the last character standing who defeats the killer is a woman. There is a perspective to be had that the final girl is an empowering archetype, but at the same time, it is normally used to reward the female character who has purity and virginity, while female characters who are more sexually open are almost always killed. In what is commonly referred to as second-wave feminism of the 60s and 70s, sexual expression was up for a large debate. It had become less of a taboo topic, and the sexism of porn was under scrutiny. It planted a seed in the horror genre that has remained ever since. The sexuality of women has continued to be a prominent theme in horror movies. How come? Well, horror is often fueled by your most intrinsic fears, like intrusion during a vulnerable or private moment. Nudity and sexuality resurface so much in the genre because they play into this natural human vulnerability and fear. But women are still disproportionately put on display in such a way compared to men. And this is no doubt because of a socialized comfort level that we have with viewing women in a sexual context that we don't have for men in the same context. Among horror movies new and old, nudity has always been used for effect. Thin, white, young bodies are made sexual, while everything else, specifically elderly nudity, is persistently used for horror. Modern examples can be seen in Hereditary, Suspiria, and It Follows. But these ingrained expectations can be toyed with to leave the audience more uneasy and provoke the viewers to confront their own expectations. In particular, Carrie depicts a sensual shower scene in a high school locker room, which is starkly contrasted when period blood appears and the room quickly descends into shouting chaos. The male fantasy is directly confronted and knocked down. Horror can uniquely utilize discomfort in ways that other genres don't have room for. In the movie Mother, the visceral pain that the audience experiences through the main character is powerful enough to leave a lasting message about the environment, the male fantasy, or whatever else a viewer might take away. The movie Rosemary's Baby creates an uncomfortable environment as well to transmit the helplessness and victimization of Rosemary to the viewer. Exaggerating uncomfortable situations to a horrifying extent is an effective tactic in leaving a lasting impression. So, what is a feminist horror movie? I can't say definitively as someone who hasn't seen every movie ever, but the ones that come to mind for me use their media form cleverly to give new perspective to feminist points. Let me know what you think, and thanks for watching.